Jay Carney, thank you for joining me. Would you say this has been your toughest week personally in your job?
You know, Piers, I would say that it's been a challenging week, but in many ways a week that I've enjoyed, because I think that when a press secretary goes to the briefing room and there's a lot of intensity in the room and a lot of news that is inspiring reporters to ask hard questions, that's what it's all about. And I have no problem with that, and I think that it's part of our democracy and part of what makes the process great. So some people have said, oh, you've really been on the firing line, and maybe it's just me, but I've kind of enjoyed it.
You may have enjoyed it, but the New York Times today said about the president that he's a bystander occupying the most powerful office in the world. Dana Milbank of the Washington Post said the president was like a bloke on a bar stool getting his information from the evening news. In the phone snooping case, Obama didn't even stir from his stool. Instead, he had his press secretary, former Time magazine journalist Jay Carney, go before an incensed press corps Tuesday afternoon and explain why the president will not be involving himself in his Justice Department's trampling of press freedoms. Now, two very reputable papers, two pretty damning indictments, both suggesting the same thing, which is the picture many are trying to lay at your feet now, and that of your boss, that you're distancing yourself so much now from stuff your own administration's doing that you're almost finding out what's happening from watching the news.
Well, what's remarkable to me, Piers, is that those very fine journalists who wrote those stories would be writing something far worse if a president, this president or any other president, was directly involved in a criminal investigation that in part was looking at his own administration. That would be, well, there's a history to it, and I assume that the two people who wrote that know the history and understand that it is entirely inappropriate for a president or a White House to be engaged in or inappropriately knowledgeable about a criminal investigation, the likes of which is underway, as we understand it, by the Justice Department. So, those kind of narratives sound right, but when you peel back the onion just a little bit, the facts just don't support it. What the president has done when it comes to the IRS situation is that when he found out, based on the IG's report, that there had been inappropriate and wrong conduct by IRS personnel, he spoke out about it, he made clear he thought it was an outrage, and he has taken action. He is the only person thus far who has taken action. His Treasury Secretary has asked for and received the resignation of the acting commissioner of the IRS.
But Jay, let me just stop you.
Well, let me just finish.
Yeah, but on that point,
and we're moving forward on putting in a new acting commissioner, and he has insisted that as we get the facts, people responsible for the failures at the IRS will be held accountable, and we will make sure that this doesn't happen again.
Right, but this all sounds very dramatic and very strong leadership and so on, until you realise that the guy who's just been fired, Stephen Miller, his contract was up on June the 1st anyway, and further to that, he wasn't around when all this was going on. So what kind of decision-making is that to get rid of a guy who seems to be detached and was leaving?
Here's what's spectacularly irresponsible about suggestions that a president should be firing people based on news reports. There was a news report, a leak from an IG, an Inspector General's report, just a series of news reports, not the report itself, not the underlying facts, not the conclusions of the IG, but news reports. We had to wait, as is entirely appropriate, until that IG report was provided to us and to the public. When we did, we acted. To do it any other way would be the height of irresponsibility. And you can be sure that nobody is more outraged by the conduct that has been uncovered by this IG review, and nobody is taking more action than the president, as is appropriate. He won't stand for it, and he's going to insist on change.
No, I get that, and the rhetoric is strong, but my point is the guy who's been the fall guy to date, Stephen Miller.
So what are you suggesting, Piers? Should we just randomly fire people before we get all the facts? That's just...
No,
that's a ridiculous suggestion.
I don't think you heard my question.
Well, you're trying to make a case that because the acting commissioner wasn't acting commissioner when this happened, that we should take some other action. Believe me, we will, as the facts become more clear and as it is clear that what actions were irresponsible and what failures took place, that the people responsible for those failures will be held accountable, as the president said.
Right,
but you seem to want to demand some kind of blind action in response to news reports instead of responsible action, which is what this president will engage in.
No, the point I was making was simply that Stephen Miller, the man who's been fired and therefore is the fall guy, not only was he not directly involved at the time this was going on, but secondly, his contract apparently is up on June the 1st. Therefore, he's been fired with all the headlines that go with it a couple of weeks before he was going anywhere. And many people are now saying, well, hang on, what kind of disciplinary action is that as a reaction to what is a pretty shameful scandal if the firing of a man, he was about to go anyway?
Piers, can I just suggest to you that it's been 24 hours since the IG report has been made public? And we are acting and will act appropriately. The Treasury Department will act appropriately. And but there seems to be this suggestion that basically people should be fired indiscriminately. That seems to be what you're suggesting, because you don't like the fact that the person who resigned wasn't there when this wasn't in place when it happened, or because his term was expiring. We will look at the facts. The Treasury Department will look at the facts, and will take action appropriately.
Let's move on to Benghazi, because clearly a lot of what came out in the emails yesterday, and it does beg the question, why didn't you guys release this a long time ago? Because it may have helped you in many ways. It does seem to exonerate the White House from being too interfering in this process. But what it definitely shows is that the State Department were directly involved. Many say a lot further than you had intimated before, and that they had orchestrated the removal of some key information from the original CIA talking points, notably the referencing of Al-Qaeda and specific Al-Qaeda affiliated
That's actually incorrect,
groups.
but keep going.
Okay, well, let me ask you, based on your assessment from everything that's in the emails that were released, is the State Department more culpable than perhaps you personally first realized in terms of what they asked to be removed?
Culpable of what? What we saw from the beginning was that the CIA took the lead in drafting talking points, and the talking points that became the source of all this faux controversy stirred up by Republicans were drafted by the CIA. And the issue that drove this fake controversy from the beginning is that Ambassador Rice went on those Sunday shows and said that based on our best assessments now, our intelligence assessments, we believe that there was a spontaneous protest that evolved into the violent attack on the facility in Benghazi. We said when this became an issue that was information that was provided to us by the CIA, provided to Congress by the CIA, that this was an intelligence assessment. Republicans pounced and attacked and suggested that improperly the White House or others altered those talking points, changed the intelligence assessment. And what the release of these emails show is that Republicans are wrong. They were wrong then, and they're wrong now. And this has been a highly politicized affair that totally misses the point about what happened in Benghazi. We should be focused on finding out who did it, who killed 4 Americans, and bringing them to justice. That's what the president's focused on. We should be focused on taking action to ensure that we have the appropriate security for our diplomats and our diplomatic facilities to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And that's what this president's been focused on, and you heard him talk about that again today. When it comes to the issue of Al-Qaeda, as I said, I think if you look at the emails, the changes that you're talking about, some of them were made by the CIA internally, and the other issues about warnings, I think you saw in the reports today that the CIA also believed that those matters should not be included in the talking points about what happened in Benghazi. So again, this has been, I think, clearly demonstrated by the talking points, by the emails that have been released, proven by these emails that this has been a concoction of Republicans to try to create a controversy, and the shame of that is that the real tragedy here, the real issue here is that 4 Americans died, and we need to take action to find those who did it, and we need to take action to make sure it never happens again.